Have you ever paused to consider a global faith that, while relatively young, has already woven this incredibly rich tapestry of philosophy, community, and, well, really resilient history?
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about Sikhism, or Sikhi, a vibrant tradition rooted way back in 15th century Punjab and now followed by, 25 to 30 million people worldwide.
That's right. And our mission today really is to take a deep dive into the very essence of Sikhism. We'll be drawing from our comprehensive source material to unravel its core beliefs, explore some, surprising historical turns, and highlight its unique practices.
Okay.
You'll hopefully gain a clear understanding of how this faith defines itself, its understanding of the divine, and its powerful emphasis on justice and equality.
Absolutely. And whether you're preparing for a big meeting, maybe catching up on a new field, or just, driven by pure curiosity, we're here to guide you. We'll try to cut through the information overload, deliver the most important nuggets of knowledge, making even complex topics engaging and hopefully truly memorable. Get ready for some genuine aha moments. So let's unpack this fascinating journey.
Okay, let's begin with the name itself. The term Sikh literally translates to students or disciples of the guru. It stems from the Punjabi verb sikhana, which means to learn.
That makes perfect sense given the emphasis on guidance. But I understand there's a really interesting discussion sort of within the community about the term Sikhism itself. Why is Sikhi often preferred over Sikhism by many Sikhs? What's the significance there?
That's a crucial point, actually. Many Sikhs prefer the endonym Sikhi because Sikhism, well, it's often perceived as a British colonial coining.
Oh, okay.
The argument is that adding an endonism sort of implies a fixed, rigid worldview, which doesn't quite align with the fluid, temporal path of continuous learning that Sikhi represents. It's seen more as a dynamic journey, not a static ideology.
That distinction immediately gives us a deeper sense of the faith's self-perception.
Very interesting. So moving from the name to its core philosophy, how does Sikhism understand the divine? What's at the absolute heart of its theology?
At its core, Sikhism is profoundly focused on the divine in a very unique way. It's described as both monotheistic and panentheistic.
Monotheistic and panentheistic. How does that work?
Right. It means there is unequivocally only one God who is simultaneously within everything that exists that's the immanent part, but also encompasses and transcends the entire created universe, the transcendent part.
So a God that is both intimately present in creation and infinitely beyond it.
Okay.
And the foundational concept here is Ik Onkar, that powerful symbol you often see. Can you tell us more about what Ik Onkar truly signifies?
Ik Onkar. It means the one creator, but its interpretations extend far beyond just that. It's seen as the one supreme reality or the all-pervading spirit.
Think of it as the faith's foundational DNA, really, encompassing its entire worldview in just those few strokes. It immediately sets Sikhism apart by emphasizing the oneness of God, not just as a creator, but as a fearless, non-vengeful being.
That's a powerful way to describe it. What other attributes help us understand this singular divine being?
Well, God in Sikhism is revered as Wahiguru, which means the wondrous teacher. Other profound attributes describe God as Nirankar, shapeless, Akal, timeless, Kartapurak, the creator being, Akal, Perk, beyond time and death, and Agam Agochar, which means incomprehensible and invisible.
Wow.
What's also fascinating is that God is understood as genderless, yet metaphorically presented in Scripture with both masculine qualities like a father and feminine ones like a creative power or mother. Humans, in turn, are sometimes seen metaphorically as soul brides longing to unite with the husband Lord.
And I remember reading this surprising detail in the Scripture about God creating life on many worlds. That really expands the scope, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It hints at a vast cosmology.
And then there's the Mul Mantar, those profound opening lines of the Guru Granth Sahib. What makes this particular passage so central?
The Mul Mantar encapsulates the very essence of Sikh theology. It begins, "There is one supreme being, the eternal reality, the creator, without fear and devoid of enmity, immortal, never incarnated, self-existent, known by grace through the true Guru." It's a statement of absolute truth, really. It defines the nature of the divine and the path to understanding it right from the outset.
With that foundational understanding of the divine, the next natural question is, how does one live this truth? That leads us directly to the Sikh path to liberation, starting with the concept of Maya.
Right, Maya.
What exactly is Maya in Sikhism, and how does it affect our spiritual journey?
Maya is often misunderstood. In Sikhism, it's not really about the physical world being unreal in itself. It's more that Maya refers to the world's values as a kind of temporary illusion or unreality.
Okay, the world's values.
Exactly. So it's not saying the physical world isn't real, but rather our attachment to, material possessions, fleeting pleasures, or even our own ego creates this deceptive sense of fulfillment. It's like chasing a mirage. It looks real, but it can never truly quench your spiritual thirst.
That analogy makes it much clearer. And those distractions that pull us away from the divine are often personified as the Panchor, or five thieves.
A five thieves.
What are these thieves and why are they so disruptive?
The five thieves are ego, anger, greed, attachment, and lust. These are seen as internal forces that prevent us from seeing the true reality and connecting with the divine.
Right.
They're believed to be particularly disruptive because they feed our sense of self-importance and worldly desires, leading ultimately to separation from God.
So the ultimate purpose of human life in Sikhism is to reconnect with Akal, the timeless one. Egotism, then, sounds like the main barrier to this connection.
Absolutely. Egotism is seen as the key obstacle.
Is the goal similar to salvation in other faiths?
Yes, the spiritual union with Akal is the ultimate goal, and this leads to Jivan Mukti, which means enlightenment or liberation within one's lifetime.
Jivan Mukti.
Okay. This concept, while you might find similar ideas in other Indian traditions like Hinduism, has a distinct Sikh flavor to it.
And how does karma fit into this? Sikhs accept concepts like reincarnation and karma, which we see in Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism. But there's a crucial modification, isn't there?
There is, yes, a vital distinction. In Sikhism, while reincarnation and karma are accepted ideas, they are significantly modified by the concept of God's grace.
Ace.
Exactly. Guru Nanak taught something like, the body takes birth because of karma, but salvation is attained through grace. So this means that while our actions definitely have consequences, ultimate liberation is seen as a gift from God, not something solely earned through merit.
That's a profound shift. So practically speaking, what steps do Sikhs take to achieve this closeness to God and overcome Maya?
They focus on several key practices. Avoiding the evils associated with Maya, consistently remembering the everlasting truth, practicing Shabad Kirtan, which is the beautiful musical recitation of hymns, meditating on Nam, the divine name, and serving humanity through selfless action, or seva.
Seva.
Also, the association with true people, or satsang, is considered very important for liberation from those cycles of reincarnation.
From philosophy, let's now turn to the human guides who shaped this faith. Sikhism was guided by a line of 10 human gurus, starting with Guru Nanak, who lived from 1469 all the way to Guru Gobind Singh, who passed in 1708.
Correct.
Each guru built upon and reinforced the message of their predecessors. But how did Guru Nanak himself define his role?
Guru Nanak was quite clear on this. He saw himself as a guide and teacher, definitely not someone to be worshipped. He emphasized that the human guru is mortal, and the focus should always remain on the divine message, not the messenger. It's a very practical approach to spiritual leadership, really.
And he's certainly put that into practice. Guru Nanak made that simple yet incredibly profound declaration. There is no Hindu, there is no Muslim, na koi Hindu, na koi Musalman.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a theological statement, was it? It was a call to community.
Absolutely. It was foundational. He then established a commune in Kartarpur, laying the groundwork for a new, inclusive community that aimed to transcend existing religious and social divisions. And the subsequent gurus continued this work. Guru Angad standardized the Gurmukhi script, which was essential for the Sikh scriptures. Guru Amar Das built a more cohesive community by sanctioning distinctive ceremonies like for birth, marriage, death, and establishing organizational structures like the Manji system, sort of like dioceses, along with the Dasvand, a tithe system.
Okay.
And later, Guru Ram Das founded Ramdaspur, which eventually became Amritsar, Sikhism's holiest city.
This period of growth, however, soon faced a crucible of persecution, which really shaped the faith. We hear about the martyrdom of Guru Arjan, the fifth guru. What happened there, and why was it so significant?
Guru Arjan was tortured and executed by the Mughal Emperor Jahangir in 1606. The sources say it was for refusing to convert to Islam. This was a watershed moment, really. It fundamentally altered the trajectory of the young faith.
How so?
It made it brutally clear that Sikhs couldn't just assume they could exist peacefully. They needed to be prepared to defend their beliefs and their community.
So how did the gurus respond to such intense persecution? What immediate changes did this lead to in Sikh practice or identity?
Well, this martyrdom led Guru Hargobind, the sixth guru and Guru Arjan's son, to formalize the doctrine of Miri and Piri.
Miri and Piri, the two swords.
Exactly. He began wearing two swords, one symbolizing Miri, which is worldly or political authority, and the other Piri, representing spiritual authority. The combination, often shown tied with a khanda symbol in the center, signified that spiritual life isn't just about contemplation. It must also inform action in the world, including the defense of righteousness.
And this leads directly to the ideal Sikh as a Sant Sipahi, or saint soldier. That concept, developed later by Guru Gobind Singh, sounds like a radical fusion of spirituality and martial prowess.
It is in many ways. The idea is that an ideal Sikh should possess both Shakti, meaning temporal power or strength, and Bhakti, spiritual qualities or devotion.
Right.
And the martyrdom of Guru Tegh Bahadur, the ninth guru, in 1675, further solidified this. He was publicly beheaded in Delhi by the Emperor Aurangzeb, again, reportedly for refusing to convert. This was another deeply traumatic event that reinforced the saint-soldier ideal and the necessity, sometimes, of self-defense for the community.
So the gurus faced martyrdom, the community became more defined, more resilient. Then in 1708, Guru Gobind Singh made what seems like a monumental decision. After this line of human gurus, what happened next? Did they appoint another human, or did something entirely different occur?
This is where it gets truly transformative, yeah. Guru Gobind Singh made the profound decision just before his death to name the Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh scripture, as his successor.
The book itself.
The book itself. This move terminated the line of human gurus and established the scripture as the 11th and eternally living guru. It fundamentally redefined authority within the faith, shifting it from a person to the divine word embodied in the scripture.
This extraordinary transition. It makes the Guru Granth Sahib not just a holy book in Sikhism, but in a sense, a living entity. What makes it so unique among world scriptures?
The Guru Granth Sahib is indeed the primary scripture. It was first compiled as the Adi Granth by Guru Arjan back in 1604, and then finalized by Guru Gobind Singh in 1678 with the addition of Guru Tegh Bahadur's hymns.
Okay.
What's truly unique is its incredible inclusivity. It's composed mainly of hymns by 7 of the Sikh gurus, but it also incorporates teachings and traditions of 13 Hindu Bhakti movement saints, people like Ramananda and Namdev, and even 2 Muslim saints, Kabir and the Sufi Sheikh Farid.
That inclusiveness sounds revolutionary for its time. Can you give us an example of how that's expressed within the text?
Absolutely. This inclusivity is powerfully expressed in, for instance, an impactful quote from Kabir found right there in the Adi Granth. I am not Hindu nor Muslim. Wow. It really emphasizes the Sikh teaching that different methods of devotion, different paths, are ultimately all for the same infinite God. Structurally, the Guru Granth Sahib is poetic, containing around 6,000 hymns or shabads set to 60 classical Indian ragas, and its language, Santva, is printed in the Gurumukhi script.
And it's treated with incredible reverence, you mentioned, almost like a living person in gurdwaras, the Sikh temples, installed every morning, put to bed at night, old copies even given funerary services.
Yes, the level of reverence is profound.
But beyond that reverence, what does it mean for a scripture to be legally recognized as a judicial person in India, capable of owning land, receiving donations? What kind of practical or symbolic power does that bestow?
It's truly remarkable. This unique legal status, recognized by the Supreme Court of India, means the Guru Granth Sahib can, legally speaking, own property and receive donations in its own right. Symbolically, it reinforces that idea of the scripture as a living entity, a perpetual authority. Practically, it allows Sikh institutions, which are often built around the Guru Granth Sahib, to manage assets and operate legally under its name, ensuring the continuity and independence of Sikh religious affairs.
That's a fascinating layer of understanding. But this level of reverence also comes with an important caution, doesn't it? Something about bibliolatry.
It does. There's a constant caution within the tradition against bibliolatry. The risk that the concrete form, the physical book, becomes the object of worship instead of the teachings within it.
Oh, okay.
The reverence is meant for the divine message, the Gurbani, contained within not just the paper and ink. It's about the message, not simply the medium.
That distinction is key. Besides the Guru Granth Sahib, are there other important texts that help illuminate Sikh thought or history?
Yes, there are other significant texts. There's the Dasam Granth, which is attributed to Guru Gobind Singh. It contains, among other things, narratives from Hindu mythology, and parts of it are used in daily Sikh prayers, although its overall authenticity and authorship are sometimes debated within the community.
Interesting.
Similarly, there's the Sarbloh Granth, which contains material on Sikh art and laws of war, but it faces similar debates about its origins and status. This textual diversity just illustrates the richness and, the ongoing scholarly discussions within Sikhism.
Right. So moving to daily devotion, what are some of the key practices Sikhs undertake to connect with the divine?
Well, key practices include Nam Japo, which is the repetition of the divine name, often Wahiguru, and Simran, which is remembrance through recitation of scripture or the divine name.
Okay.
And Shabad Kirtan, the singing of Gurbani, those sacred hymns, is highly emphasized. Guru Nanak himself stressed it as a powerful way to achieve tranquility and communion with God.
And for initiated Sikhs?
For initiated Sikhs, known as Amritdharis, reciting the 5 Banais daily is fundamental. These are specific prayers including Japji Sahib, Jap Sahib, Tav Prasad Savai, Chopai Sahib, and Anand Sahib. It's a core part of their spiritual discipline.
Beyond individual devotion, community and service seem incredibly central to Sikh life. How does the concept of savai, or selfless service, manifest?
Seva, along with Nam Simran, remembering the divine name, is considered a primary way to overcome egotism and, connect with God through serving others. It traditionally manifests in 3 forms. Tan, which is physical labor.
Like volunteering.
Exactly, volunteering physical effort. Then man, which means dedicating one's heart and mind to service, doing it sincerely. And dan, providing material or financial support. So it's about contributing with your body, mind, and resources.
And this extends to how Sikhs live and interact economically, doesn't it? There are principles like Kirat Karo and Vanchak.
That's right. Kirat Karo emphasizes earning an honest living through hard work, integrity in your profession. And Vanchaka is about sharing what you earn with the needy for the benefit of the entire community.
So it's a holistic approach.
Very much so. It's an economic and spiritual philosophy woven together. Earn honestly, and then generously share the fruits of your labor. It creates this complete cycle of community responsibility and mutual support.
A powerful embodiment of this is surely the langar tradition, that free communal vegetarian meal served in all gurdwaras. It seems such a simple concept, a community kitchen, yet it's been this profound symbol of equality for centuries. Do you think that simplicity is part of its enduring power?
Absolutely, I think you've hit on it. The langar is open to everyone, regardless of faith, caste, gender, status. Anyone can walk in and eat. And it's maintained entirely by volunteers doing seva. Its simplicity allows it to be universally accessible. It breaks down social barriers in a very direct way. Everyone sits together on the floor, side by side, sharing the same simple, nourishing meal. This tangible act of selfless service and radical equality resonates incredibly deeply and makes its message just so powerful and enduring.
Speaking of equality, justice is another cornerstone we've touched upon. How is justice, or niya, understood in Sikhism?
God is seen as the ultimate sovereign, the true emperor, who dispenses justice through the natural law of karma, but also through divine grace. Niya refers to justice itself, and Dar represents the broader concept of moral order or righteousness in Sikhism, is about living rightly.
And Guru Gobind Singh articulated this ethos in a way that really shapes that saint-soldier ideal we discussed.
What was his teaching on the pursuit of justice? How should one act?
He taught, and this is quite significant, that one must first try all the peaceful means of negotiation in the pursuit of justice.
Yeah.
Diplomacy comes first.
But, he added, if all those peaceful means fail, then it is legitimate, even righteous, to draw the sword in defense of righteousness. It's a last resort, but a necessary one sometimes.
A conditional use of force.
Exactly. Furthermore, Sikhism, from the gurus onwards, has strongly emphasized gender equality. There's no scriptural basis for discriminating against women in religious obligations or leadership roles within the community.
That makes so much sense, connecting the spiritual ideal to practical action, including defense and equality. So what does this all mean for daily life and the historical journey of the faith? What are some key observances and festivals for Sikhs?
Well, key observances definitely include Vaisakhi. It's hugely important, celebrating the formation of the Khalsa in 1699. There's also Bandi Chhor Divas, which often coincides with Diwali, but commemorates Guru Hargobind's release from prison, along with 52 princes.
Ah, okay, a distinct meaning.
Yes. And Hola Mahalla is another significant one. It's Guru Gobind Singh's unique 3-day festival featuring martial arts displays and poetry, usually following the Hindu festival of Holi.
Yes, and pilgrimage to sacred sites like Harmandir Sahib, the Golden Temple, is widespread. You mentioned many Sikhs take customary dips in the Sarovar, the sacred pool there, believing in its restorative powers.
That's a very common practice, yes.
And life cycle ceremonies also have distinctive Sikh traditions. How are children named, for example? That sounded interesting.
For child naming, it's a beautiful tradition. The Guru Granth Sahib is opened at random to a page, and the first letter of the first word on the top left-hand side determines the first letter of the child's name.
Wow.
It's a way to connect the child directly to the living guru right from the start. And traditionally, all boys are given the last name Singh, meaning lion, and girls are given Kaur, meaning princess. These were initially titles conferred upon joining the Khalsa, signifying a new, shared, egalitarian identity, moving beyond old caste names.
The marriage ceremony, called Anand Karaj, the ceremony of bliss, is performed before the Guru Granth Sahib. And upon death, cremation is the usual practice, with specific prayers during the funeral, known as Antim Sanskar. Now, central to Sikh identity is the Khalsa. We've mentioned it a few times. What does that term mean, and what's involved in becoming part of it?
Khalsa literally means pure or sovereign. It's the collective name for fully initiated Sikhs who undergo the Amrit Sanyakar, the ceremony of initiation, sometimes called the nectar ceremony.
The nectar ceremony.
Yes. They drink sweetened water, Amrit, stirred with a double-edged sword, the Khanda, while prayers are recited. This initiation binds them to a specific code of conduct, the Rihat Maryada, and signifies their direct connection to the Guru. The first initiation ceremony, as mentioned, took place on Baisakhi in 1699 when Guru Gobind Singh baptized the Panya Pyar, the 5 beloved ones, who then remarkably baptized him in turn, symbolizing absolute equality and shared commitment.
That reciprocity is powerful. And this distinguishes Amritdhari, or Khalsa Sikhs, who are initiated, from Kesdari, or Sahajari Sikhs, who identify as Sikhs, often keep uncut hair, but are not formally initiated through the ceremony.
Exactly. It's an important distinction within the community.
And as a defining aspect of the Khalsa, baptized Sikhs wear the 5Ks, or Panyakako, at all times. Can you briefly describe them and their significance?
Sure. The 5Ks are, first, Kas, which is uncut hair, symbolizing spirituality, devotion, acceptance of God's will. This is why most initiated Sikh men, and some women, wear turbans.
Okay.
Second is the Kaka, a small wooden comb kept in the hair. It represents cleanliness, tidiness, keeping one's life orderly. Third, the Ka, a circular steel or iron bracelet, usually worn on the right wrist. It symbolizes the eternal nature of God, restraint, and the bond with the guru and the community.
Right.
Fourth is the Karpan, a sword or dagger. Crucially, it represents the duty to uphold justice and defend the defenseless and the faith. It's not a symbol of aggression, but of readiness to protect righteousness. Its size can vary greatly.
Got it. And the fifth?
The fifth is the Kachra, a specific type of cotton undergarment, symbolizing self-control, chastity, and readiness for action. Each K has both practical and deep symbolic purposes that reinforce Sikh identity and values daily.
The faith's evolution wasn't just spiritual. You mentioned after the martyrdom of Guru Arjan, Sikhism transformed, in part, into a political movement as well. This eventually led to the Sikh Empire, headquartered in Lahore, covering a vast area in the early 19th century.
Yes, that's a significant phase.
What was the legacy of this empire, particularly under its most famous ruler, Maharaja Ranjit Singh?
Maharaja Ranjit Singh is a major figure. His legacy includes consolidating Sikh power, establishing a relatively secular and prosperous state for its time, and famously restoring and gilding the Harmandir Sahib, which is why it's called the Golden Temple.
Ah, that's where the gold came from.
Largely, yes. His rule marked a period of significant political power and cultural flourishing for Sikhs, showcasing their ability to establish a sovereign state rooted in their principles. However, the empire declined quite rapidly after his death in 1839, partly due to struggles over succession and then, of course, British expansion.
Okay. Now, in terms of internal dynamics today, while Sikhism has a unified core around the Guru Granth Sahib, it also has various sub-traditions or sects like the Udaisis, Meenas, Namdaris, and Nirankaris. How do these groups differ, and what does their existence tell us about the faith?
While these groups might have differing interpretations or practices, for instance, some, like the Namdharis or certain Nirankari branches, historically continued to follow living human gurus after 1708, which is a major departure from mainstream Khalsa belief.
Right.
Others might practice rituals like arite, common in Hindu worship, or adhere strictly to vegetarianism, whereas mainstream Khalsa practice, as per the Akal Tak, permits jatka meat. Their existence illustrates the natural diversity of interpretation and historical development within any major faith, even one with such a strong, unified core teaching. Interestingly, some of the very early sects were even, at times, supported by Mughal rulers, highlighting the complex political and religious landscape back then.
This brings us to another complex issue, the caste system. Despite Sikhism's clear, foundational rejection of caste and its radical emphasis on equality, what has been the reality on the ground, historically and even now?
It's a definite point of tension and ongoing struggle. It's a nuanced reality. Despite the faith's unambiguous ideals, a caste system, including, unfortunately, aspects of prejudice and even untouchability, has been practiced in some Sikh communities, particularly historically in rural Punjab. Landowning Jat Sikhs have often been socially dominant.
So, the ideal hasn't always matched the practice.
Regrettably, no. However, it's crucial to acknowledge the ongoing efforts from within the community to address these disparities. You see, for example, Dalit Sikhs, those from lower caste backgrounds, building their own gurdwaras in some areas to ensure dignity and control over their religious spaces. And there are reserved seats for Sikhs from lower caste backgrounds in the SGPC, the main administrative body for gurdwaras in Punjab. So it's a continued tension between the powerful egalitarian ideal and ingrained social practices.
Now, a truly significant and traumatic event in modern Sikh history was the partition of India in 1947. You mentioned it was a watershed event for Sikhs. Can you explain why it had such a profound and devastating impact on their community?
It was catastrophic. Sikhs historically lived across the Punjab region, which was sliced in two by the Radcliffe Line, the border drawn for the partition between India and Pakistan.
Right through their heartland.
Exactly. They strongly opposed the partition, fearing, correctly, persecution and the division of their community, their fertile lands, and their sacred sites, many of which ended up in Pakistan, like the birthplace of Guru Nanak. The partition unleashed unimaginable violence, mass migration, organized massacres, abductions, and retaliatory actions on all sides. Sikhs were one of the most severely affected communities in terms of deaths, horrific violence, loss of property, and displacement. It resulted in what's been called the largest foot convoy of refugees in human history, as millions of Sikhs and Hindus fled West Punjab and Muslims fled East Punjab. The trauma runs incredibly deep.
And moving into more recent decades, there's the sensitive and complex topic of the Khalistan movement. What was this movement about, and what were the key events and consequences, particularly in the 1980s?
In the early 1980s, some Sikh groups, fueled by various political and religious grievances, began advocating for an independent Sikh state called Khalistan, primarily carved out of Punjab. This movement gained momentum, and some factions turned militant.
Okay.
This culminated in the occupation of parts of the Golden Temple complex, including the Akal Takht, the seat of temporal authority, by heavily armed militant groups led by Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale.
Right, I remember this.
In response, the Indian Army launched Operation Blue Star in June 1984, an operation ordered by the Prime Minister at the time, Indira Gandhi, to flesh out the militants. It was a fierce battle within the sacred complex.
And the consequences were dire.
Extremely. It resulted in significant loss of life on both sides, major damage to the Akal Takht, and the destruction of the Sikh reference library, a huge loss of historical texts. This operation deeply alienated many Sikhs worldwide.
And led to further tragedy.
Yes. It was followed tragically by the assassination of Indira Gandhi by her Sikh bodyguards in October 1984, and then the horrific anti-Sikh riots, particularly in Delhi, where thousands of innocent Sikhs were killed in organized pogroms. It's a very dark chapter. It is important to note, though, as the sources mention, that despite these immense provocations and efforts by some militants to ignite broader ethnic conflict, these were largely ignored by the majority of Sikhs and their Hindu neighbors in Punjab, showcasing a deep-seated resilience and desire for communal harmony among the wider population.
Looking globally today, while over 90% of Sikhs still live in India, primarily in Punjab, there are significant and vibrant communities all over the world. Where can we find these large Sikh populations? And is there any particular country that stands out?
Large Sikh diaspora communities thrive in countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, and notably Canada. Canada is particularly interesting because it has the largest proportion of Sikhs relative to its total population, at about 2.1%. This global diaspora really speaks to the faith's adaptability and the incredible resilience and enterprise of its community members who've settled far from Punjab.
Moving towards wrapping up, let's touch on some specific prohibitions and distinctive practices. There are 4 major transgressions or kurahits for initiated Sikhs. What's the first and perhaps most visible of these?
The first is the prohibition against hair removal. Cutting, trimming, shaving, or otherwise altering hair from any part of the body is strictly forbidden for initiated Sikhs.
Right.
This is why maintaining uncut hair, kus, often covered by a turban for men, is such a visible marker of Sikh identity, symbolizing acceptance of God's creation as it is.
The second prohibition relates to diet, consuming kutha meat. This is specifically meat slaughtered according to Muslim or Jewish rituals, halal or shachita.
Correct. That specific type of meat is prohibited.
What's the nuance here regarding vegetarianism versus other meat?
It's a point of some internal discussion. While many Sikhs are vegetarian, and the langar meal is always vegetarian to be inclusive, there isn't a universal religious prohibition on eating meat itself for Khalsa Sikhs. The Akal Takht issued an edict back in 1980, clarifying that Amritdhari Sikhs can eat meat, provided it is jatka meat.
Gatka.
Jatka means meat from an animal killed swiftly, ideally with a single blow, minimizing suffering. The absolute prohibition is on the kutha method. So vegetarianism is common and respected, but not strictly mandatory for all initiated Sikhs, unlike the ban on kutha meat.
Okay, that clarifies it. Third, adultery is strictly prohibited. That's quite clear. And what about intoxication? That's the 4th major transgression.
Yes, the 4th is intoxication. This is generally understood to forbid the consumption of tobacco, which is especially taboo, but also alcohol, non-medicinal opium, hemp, other narcotics, cocaine, and so on. The ideal is to maintain a clear mind for devotion and righteous living.
Right, but there's a controversial practice related to this among some groups.
There is, yes. Among some traditional Akali Nihang warrior groups, there's a practice of ritually consuming a cannabis-infused drink called Shahidi Dag, or bang.
As a drink, not smoked.
Correct. It's consumed as a liquid, often during specific religious observances, and they believe it aids in meditation and achieving a state of spiritual readiness. It's definitely a controversial practice within the wider Sikh community, and these groups often resist efforts to ban this traditional practice, citing historical precedent. It's not mainstream, though.
Interesting complexity there. And what other practices are generally avoided or discouraged in Sikhism?
Well, other avoided practices include the piercing of the nose or ears simply for wearing ornaments, though interpretations on this have varied historically. Also, strictly forbidden is female infanticide, and Sikhs are enjoined not even to maintain social relationships with those who practice it.
That's a strong stance.
Very strong. Other prohibitions include stealing, engaging in dubious associations or partnerships, and gambling. Also, traditionally, Sikh women are discouraged from wearing veils or keeping their faces hidden, reflecting principles of equality and openness. And Sikhs are generally advised against wearing tokens of other faiths or participating in idol worship, and initiated Sikhs should not go bareheaded or wear caps instead of a turban or head covering.
Okay, and finally, one more key distinctive practice, highlighting Sikhism's egalitarian nature, the absence of hereditary priests.
Absolutely. Guru Gobind Singh explicitly abolished the hereditary priestly class. In Sikhism, there's no ordained clergy in the way many other religions have. Any Sikh, man or woman, who is knowledgeable about the scriptures and committed to the principles can become a Granthi, the person who reads from the Guru Granth Sahib and looks after the Gurdwara. Leadership is ideally based on merit, knowledge, and devotion, not birthright.
So we've journeyed through Sikhism's profound philosophy of a singular, all-encompassing divine. It's a really remarkable historical evolution marked by both deep devotion and incredible resilience, and its vibrant global community striving constantly for justice, equality, and selfless service.
It's been quite a sweep through a rich tradition.
Absolutely. And to leave you, our listener, with a thought. In a world awash with information and where traditions are constantly evolving, what does it truly mean for a faith to consider its scripture not just a holy book, but a living guru? And even as we learned, a judicial person in the eyes of the law, That's a unique intertwining of the spiritual, the symbolic, and the legal, isn't it?
It really is.
And how does a faith that began with that radical declaration, there is no Hindu, there is no Muslim, continue today to navigate its own internal diversities, the pressures of history like partition, and external challenges, while still striving to hold true to those foundational principles of truth, service, and justice?
A lot to think about there.
Indeed. The deep dive into Sikhism has really only just begun for you. What aspect of this rich tradition stood out to you the most? We definitely encourage you to keep learning and exploring. What if we could, fundamentally change what it means to be human? Like, what if we could live way longer, think faster, maybe even reshape our actual bodies?
It sounds like pure science fiction, doesn't it?
It really does, but maybe it's not so far off anymore. Today, we're doing a deep dive into transhumanism. It's this pretty profound philosophical and intellectual movement that seems to be moving from just ideas into, well, actual practice.
Yeah, it's gaining momentum.
So our mission here is to cut through the noise, give you the crucial insights on this, honestly, pretty surprising and often controversial topic. We're pulling from a whole range of sources.
A really comprehensive set, yeah.
Think of this as your express lane to understanding the potential, the dangers, and all the complex ethical stuff it kicks up. Okay, let's unpack this fascinating idea.
It's genuinely compelling. How many different threads of thought from way back in history right up to today's debates all kind of converge on this one concept? Our sources really capture that. History, current arguments, some really wild future ideas. It's expansive, makes you rethink a lot.
It definitely does. Okay, so let's get a baseline. At its core, what is transhumanism exactly?
Okay, so essentially it's a movement pushing for radical enhancement of the human condition.
A radical enhancement.
Yeah. The idea is to develop and crucially make widely available new future tech, even to seriously boost our longevity, our thinking power, and just our general well-being.
And we're not just talking small tweaks here, are we? Incremental improvements.
No, not at all. Some transhumanists are speculating about transforming us into, well, post-human beings, something fundamentally different from what we are now.
Wow.
But, beyond just personal upgrades, there's another big focus, sometimes overlooked, protecting humanity from existential risks.
Existential risks like what?
We're talking the big stuff, AI going rogue, asteroid hits, that gray goo nightmare scenario with the nanobots.
Right, the self-replicating stuff. Scary.
Exactly. Or pandemics, societal collapse, nuclear war. So it raises this key question, right? Is this all about making ourselves better? Or is it fundamentally about survival?
That's a really interesting split. And what's surprising, like you said, is how old these urges seem to be. You can find similar ideas way back, can't you? Ancient quests for immortality.
Absolutely. Think about the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Right.
Or searches for the Fountain of Youth, the elixir of life. These are ancient dreams. Even Dante, in his Paradiso, coined this word transhumanar, basically to transcend human nature.
Huh. So the core idea has been bubbling for centuries.
And what's really striking is how these older ideas kind of foreshadow today's tech goals. Thinkers like Francis Bacon touched on it, and René Descartes way back in 1637.
In his Discourse on Method.
That's the one. He actually envisioned medicine getting so good it could grant physical immortality and stronger minds. He saw science overcoming the body's limits.
So the seeds were planted a long, long time ago. Then you have people like William Godwin arguing for earthly immortality in the 1790s.
Right, and political justice. And his novel, St. Leon, some think it might have influenced Mary Shelley.
Ah, Frankenstein. Makes sense.
Yeah. And there's always debate about Nietzsche's Übermensch, the overhuman. Was that an influence? His focus was more self-actualization, maybe not pure tech, but the links debated.
Okay, so we see these philosophical roots. How did it start solidifying into something more concrete, especially in the 20th century?
Well, you get key figures really laying the groundwork. J.B.S. Haldane, a British geneticist, wrote this essay in 1923, Daedalus, Science in the Future.
What did he predict?
Huge benefits from science applied to human biology. Things like ectogenesis, growing embryos outside the body. Yeah. And he made this great point that big advancements often seem like blasphemy or perversion at first.
That tracks. And then there was J.D. Bernal a few years later.
Yeah, 1929. He speculated about space colonization, but also radical human changes, bionic implants, cognitive enhancement, really pushing the boundaries in his writing.
And Julian Huxley, he's the one who really popularized the term transhumanism, right?
Exactly. In a 1957 essay, he defined it as humanity being able to transcend itself in its entirety. So it wasn't just about individuals, but like the whole species evolving together.
A collective evolution.
Yeah.
Interesting. So ancient ideas, early scientific speculation, the term gets coined. How did this start showing up in like actual culture or movements, especially heading into the 60s?
That's when you see figures like FM 2030 pop up. He actually changed his name from FM Esfandiar.
FM 2030. Why?
Well, he saw 2030 as this potential milestone year for an ageless future. He started identifying transhumans as people already adopting technologies and lifestyles that were sort of transitional, bridging the gap to post-humanity.
Got it. And this idea of radical change leads pretty directly to the concept of the technological singularity, doesn't it?
Precisely. That came from I.J. Good, a British cryptologist, back in 1965.
What was his definition?
He talked about an ultra-intelligent machine, something that could massively outperform any human intellect. And crucially, this machine could design even better machines, which leads to an intelligence explosion. Good called it the last invention that man need ever make.
Whoa, okay. The implications of that are huge. Would we even understand it?
That's the question, isn't it? It forces a total rethink.
So it wasn't just good thinking about this. Who else started exploring where this rapid tech advance could lead, taking it from pure theory towards something more, well, tangible?
Yeah, people like Marvin Minsky, Hans Moravec, Ray Kurzweil, they really ran with these ideas. They blended, serious technical thinking with some pretty bold futuristic speculation.
And wasn't this around the time cryonics started getting attention too?
Exactly. Robert Ettinger's book, The Prospect of Immortality, came out in 1964. That was foundational for cryonics freezing bodies, essentially. Then he wrote Man into Superman in 72.
Okay, so by the 80s, things start getting more organized.
Definitely. The first self-described transhumanists started meeting up, actually, at UCLA. FM 2030 was lecturing there on his third-way futurism. And you had artists like Natasha Vita-More getting involved early on.
What kind of work?
Well, she made a film in 1980 called Breaking Away, exploring humans breaking free from biological limits. She was very focused on the aesthetic and cultural side of becoming transhuman.
And then nanotechnology enters the picture in a big way.
Right. 1986, Eric Drexler publishes Engines of Creation, all about nanotechnology, molecular assemblers. He also founded the Foresight Institute. And fun fact, the Alcor Life Extension Foundation, the cryonics place, kind of became a meeting spot for these futurists.
A literal hub.
Yeah.
And then Max Moore comes along.
Yeah, in 1990, philosopher Max Moore laid out his principles of extropy. This really defined modern transhumanism, guiding humanity towards a post-human state, but keeping that humanist respect for reason, science, progress, very influential.
And then the World Transhumanist Association, the WTA, was formed.
That was Nick Bostrom and David Pierce in 1998. They also drafted the Transhumanist Declaration.
And what was key about the WTA early on?
Well, one really interesting thing was their immediate concern about access. They worried about enhancement tech creating this huge gap, a genetic divide, Only the rich get the upgrades.
That seems prescient.
It does. They later rebranded as Humanity Plus in 2008, but that focus on equitable access has stuck around. It's a major ethical thread.
That fairness issue is massive, isn't it? If these enhancements become real, who gets them? That shifts the whole debate.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's maybe dig a bit deeper into some core concepts like the relationship between transhumanism and posthumanism. Are they the same thing? Is one part of the other?
Right, because both seem to foresee a future where humanity evolves into something new. An intelligent species beyond human?
There are definitely overlaps, but differences too. Transhumanism tends to focus more on an evolutionary path, right? Seeing the post-human future as a goal, we actively work towards participatory evolution.
We guide our own evolution.
Exactly. That's often different from what's called cultural posthumanism in the arts or humanities, which is often more about critiquing traditional human-centered thinking.
Okay.
And here's a tricky part. Some critics say transhumanism, for all its future talk, might just be extending old ideas about the autonomous individual rather than truly moving beyond them. It raises that dilemma. How much can we change before we're not us anymore?
That is the million-dollar question, yeah.
Yeah.
If you enhance your brain or radically change your body, what happens to your identity, your humanness?
Precisely. Some secular humanists see transhumanism as sort of an offshoot of their own movement, but maybe one that's overly focused on technology, technocentric, and really fixated on overcoming death.
And the aims are distinct, right? That focus on improving the individual human body.
Very much so. There's this strong undercurrent of a kind of ethical duty to improve, to progress, to enter this transhuman phase where we consciously direct our evolution instead of leaving it to nature.
And this ties into Ray Kurzweil's ideas about accelerating change.
Absolutely. Kurzweil believes tech innovation is speeding up so fast we might hit that technological singularity, that intelligence explosion we mentioned, and it could fundamentally change humans. Maybe, he thinks, even in the next few decades.
Wow, that's soon. And didn't Stephen Hawking link this kind of enhancement to our actual survival as a species?
He did. He basically suggested that without designing ourselves either genetically or maybe through brain-computer interfaces to be smarter and maybe less aggressive, human civilization might just self-destruct. We might be too flawed collectively to handle the power we're developing.
That's a heavy thought. But it's also worth pointing out, not every transhumanist is chasing immortality, right?
Good point. Yeah, there was a survey, and something like nearly a quarter of transhumanists said they didn't want physical immortality.
Why not?
Reasons like potential boredom, worries about overpopulation, or even wanting some kind of afterlife. So, yeah, while radical life extension is huge, it's not the only goal for everyone in the movement.
Okay, let's talk ethics. Transhumanists often push back against the idea of natural being sacred, don't they?
They do. They tend to see natural as a pretty fuzzy concept. They often contrast their view with critics they label bioconservatives or sometimes bioludites, people who argue against messing with our biology.
And the fairness issue comes up again. Unfair human enhancement, like performance-enhancing drugs in sports, but potentially much more profound.
Exactly. That fear of creating two tiers of humanity, maybe even, some speculate, two different species, one vastly advantaged over the other. It's a serious social concern.
How do transhumanists address that inequality risk?
Well, thinkers like Bostrom and Pierce argue for extending moral concern really broadly, not just to all humans, but to all sentient beings. Non-human animals, maybe even AIs or extraterrestrials if we find them. Their goal is incredibly ambitious. Eliminate suffering entirely.
Eliminate all suffering.
That's the ultimate aim for some strands, yeah? Which leads to that crucial question again. How do we make sure enhancement actually benefits everyone, or at least all sentient life, and doesn't just create new hierarchies?
It's clear there's a lot of variety within the movement itself. You mentioned different currents.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. You've got abolitionism, which is focused specifically on ending suffering using technology. There's democratic transhumanism, trying to blend these ideas with liberal democracy and ensure fairness.
Immortalist.
Focus squarely on radical life extension, yeah. Then singularitarianism, people actively working towards or believing in the coming technological singularity. And even techno-Gaianism.
What's that?
Using advanced tech specifically to restore Earth's environment. So lots of different angles and priorities.
What's really compelling about those different currents, like abolitionism wanting to end all suffering, or singularitarians focused on that AI explosion, is how they push boundaries, but sometimes in conflicting ways, you know?
Absolutely. The intense focus on individual immortality might clash with the collective goals of, say, democratic transhumanism trying to ensure fairness for society. It highlights the internal debates.
And surprisingly, maybe, there's an intersection with spirituality, despite the movement often feeling quite secular.
It is surprising, yeah. Mostly the focus is practical, longer, healthier lives. But some transhumanists are pursuing hopes that sound traditionally religious, like literal immortality. You see that in groups like Realism, for instance. And there's also some fringe speculation about using like neurotheology or neurotech to achieve deeper self-knowledge, maybe even spiritual states.
Which brings us to wilder ideas like mind uploading.
Exactly. The theory of transferring your consciousness into computer hardware. Think about Frank Tipler's omega point idea.
Remind me.
His proposal was that as the universe collapses, it could create conditions where all consciousness could be preserved and run in a giant simulation, achieving a sort of post-human godhood.
Wow, that sounds intense. Almost like Teilhard de Chardin's noosphere concept. but taken to an extreme cosmic level.
Yeah, there are parallels drawn there, that idea of a collective consciousness. Tipler's omega point is like the ultimate version of that.
But there must be pushback, especially from religious perspectives.
Oh, definitely. Christian critiques, for example, often argue mind uploading devalues the physical body, maybe linking it to older Gnostic ideas where the material world is seen as flawed or evil. There's an ongoing, sometimes tense, dialogue between transhumanism and various faiths.
And studies show less religious people are more open to it.
Generally, yes, studies tend to show a negative correlation between how religious someone is and how likely they are to accept transhumanist ideas. At the end of the day, it forces this profound rethink of what life and consciousness even are, questions that used to belong only to religion or philosophy.
Okay, so let's shift from the deep theory. How are these ideas actually being put into practice? You mentioned enhancing the nervous system earlier.
Right. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, kind of blurring that line between sci-fi and reality. Kevin Warwick's experiment back in 2002.
Tell me about that.
He had this array of 100 electrodes surgically implanted in his arm nerve fibers. It linked his nervous system directly to a computer.
Seriously, what could he do?
He could control a robot hand just by thinking, essentially through his neural signals. And even wilder, he electronically communicated signals between his nervous system and his wife's after she also got implants, a direct neural link.
That's incredible. But maybe on a more everyday level, lots of people are already engaging in basic transhumanism, aren't they? Even if they don't call it that.
Absolutely. Think about cosmetic surgery purely for aesthetics. Or athletes using human growth hormones, even common things like cognitive enhancers, Ritalin, Adderall, or lifestyle drugs like Viagra or Botox used to maintain youthfulness. These are all ways people are already using tech to modify the natural human state.
And what about more extreme examples like that artist with the antenna?
Neil Harbison. Yeah, he's a self-described cyborg artist. He has an antenna permanently implanted in his skull.
What does it do?
It allows him to sense colors beyond the normal human spectrum infrareds, ultraviolets, translating them into audible vibrations he perceives. It's a powerful example of what's called morphological freedom.
Morphological freedom?
Yeah, the idea that individuals should have the right to modify their own bodies however they choose.
Got it. And this ties into that NBIC convergence idea.
Exactly. Nano, bio, info, nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, cognitive science. The idea is that these fields are converging and that synergy could unlock truly transformative future tech.
Like what kind of sick?
Well, the hypothetical stuff. Really immersive, simulated realities, full mind uploading like we discussed, maybe making cryonics actually reversible and effective.
And it's not just individuals pursuing this. Governments are involved too.
Yeah, the U.S. Department of Defense, for example, has sponsored research into creating super soldiers.
Seriously.
Things like enabling soldiers to stay effective in combat for, say, 168 hours straight without sleep. It raises huge questions about military applications, obviously. The ethics, the potential arms race and human enhancement. It's a major area of concern.
Understandably. I mean, the whole concept of human enhancement is just inherently controversial, isn't it? It sparks intense debate, both practical and ethical.
Absolutely. It's definitely a hot-button issue.
What about feasibility? Are these goals even realistic?
Well, there's skepticism there, too. Back in '92, sociologist Max Dublin pointed to all the failed tech predictions of the past. He saw transhumanism as driven by scientism, fanaticism, and nihilism. Pretty strong words.
Wow.
And Gregory Stock, who's actually quite sympathetic to enhancement overall, is still skeptical about widespread cyborgization like everyone getting implants. He thinks biological tweaks, genetics, metabolism are more likely pathways in the near term.
And philosopher Mary Midgley had criticisms too.
Also 92, yeah. She saw the quest for immortality specifically as kind of quasi-scientific dreams, self-indulgent power fantasies, basically, driven by fear of death.
Then there's the allogyny critique. What's that?
That comes from Jeremy Rifkin and Stuart Newman. They focus on the sheer unpredictability of messing with genetics. They point out that things like cloning or altering genes in embryos are often really error-prone, disruptive. It raises a fundamental question. Can we really control the biological outcomes when we start tinkering at that level?
Do transhumanists have answers for that kind of uncertainty?
They try. James Hughes suggests we could use super powerful computer models of the human genome to simulate genetic changes first, maybe speed up testing and approval safely.
Okay.
And Gregory Stock has mentioned artificial chromosomes as potentially safer, more precise way to do genetic engineering than current methods.
What about outright moral objections? Religious groups must have strong views.
Oh, definitely. The Vatican, for instance, in 2002, explicitly called changing our fundamental genetic identity radically immoral. And the idea of creating a superhuman being, unthinkable, they said. A violation of human dignity.
And critiques about how we view the body, seeing it just as a machine.
Right, that instrumental conception of the human body. Some worry we'll just see people as objects to be optimized, fixed, upgraded. Feminist thinkers like Susan Bordeaux connect this to wider societal pressures, especially around body image and perfection for everyone.
Then there's the big one, losing our human identity.
Yeah, that's a core fear. Bill McKibben argued back in 2003 that if we remove our basic human limitations, mortality, physical constraints, cognitive limits, we might remove the very things that give life meaning. If everything's possible, does choice still matter? He pointed to groups like the Amish who deliberately limit technology to preserve their way of life.
So the argument is our limits define us.
In a way, yes. That our struggles and limitations are what create the context for value and meaning. It really gets to the heart of what makes us human.
And that naturally leads to fears about blurring the lines, creating, well, monsters. Like in Frankenstein or Blade Runner, human clones, human-animal chimeras, things that feel fundamentally unnatural or wrong.
That yuck factor is powerful. But there are counter-arguments. Ronald Bailey points out McKibben's Amish example isn't perfect. Some Amish communities do use advanced medicine like gene therapy for certain diseases. And he argues that meaning is subjective. People find it in all sorts of ways, limitations or not. Plus, Woody Evans makes the point that even if we created self-aware clones or chimeras, they'd just be unique individuals deserving rights. He challenges us to get past the yuck factor and what he calls human racism.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Socioeconomic impacts, the Gattaca scenario, right? The genetic haves and have-nots.
Exactly. That's a huge, persistent fear. That enhancement tech would just massively widen the gap between rich and poor, creating this rigid genetic divide.
How do proponents respond to that, especially the more democratically minded ones?
Well, democratic transhumanists like James Hughes argue for policies to ensure access. Things like a universal healthcare voucher system that could cover enhancement tech.
Why not just ban it to prevent the divide?
Their argument is that banning it won't work. It'll just drive it underground, make it unsafe, or ensure only the rich can get it through black markets or going abroad. So they argue making it legal, regulated, and accessible is actually the fairer route. But how to actually ensure that equitable access? That's the billion-dollar question.
Francis Fukuyama famously called transhumanism the world's most dangerous idea. Why?
Back in 2004, yeah. His fear was that it would fundamentally alter human nature in ways that could undermine the very basis of liberal democracy, which he argued relies on a certain shared human equality.
And Jürgen Habermas had similar concerns about altering embryos.
Yes, in 2003. He argued that genetically programming someone at the embryo stage undermines their future autonomy and violates a kind of species ethic, the unspoken understanding that we all start from a biologically unchosen place. It messes with the foundations of our moral community, he thought.
But again, there are counters.
Ronald Bailey, for instance, argues political equality is based on rights, not biology. He claims genetic engineering could even reduce inequality by making desirable traits more widely available instead of just relying on the genetic lottery.
What about the shadow of eugenics? That history looms large.
It does, and it's something transhumanists are very aware of. Major organizations are explicit. They condemn the coercive, racist, classist eugenics of the past completely.
So what do they advocate for instead?
They talk about a new eugenics or germinal choice. The key difference being it must be voluntary and aimed at maximizing public health and minimizing genetic inequalities, not creating some master race. But of course, the term itself is incredibly loaded.
Understandably. Okay, what about existential risks? Could the tech itself be dangerous?
That's Martin Rees's big warning. The British Astronomer Royal argued in 2003 that powerful new tech inherently brings huge risks of disaster alongside opportunity. He called for much tighter controls, maybe even rethinking scientific openness, invoking the precautionary principle.
Which basically says, if you don't know the risks, go slow.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But transhumanists often argue the precautionary principle is too paralyzing, unrealistic even. They propose something called differential technological development,
Meaning?
meaning we should actively try to slow down potentially harmful technologies while simultaneously accelerating beneficial ones, especially tech that could protect us from risks like AI safety research or asteroid defense.
Interesting distinction. And there are even debates about birth rates.
Yeah, a bit niche, but some see antinatalism discouraging having kids as an obstacle to achieving a post-human future, while others might argue for pronatalism encouraging more births to ensure humanity continues towards that goal.
Finally, you mentioned the term transhumanism itself is sometimes used
Mm.
differently, co-opted.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating and maybe disturbing recent trend. The word transhumanism is being picked up by various often anti-democratic groups as a kind of bogeyman.
Like who?
You see it used by some Putin sympathizers, radical anti-vax movements, certain Christian fundamentalist groups. They use transhumanism as this label for a perceived enemy, a sort of common enemy stereotype.
Why? What does it represent to them?
It's become a shorthand, an ideological rallying point against liberal democracies, against modernity, against perceived Western decline or globalist agendas. They paint it as this sinister force trying to destroy traditional values, religion, and human nature itself.
So they're using the term to unite diverse groups against a shared perceived threat.
Exactly. It's a potent narrative, even if it massively distorts what transhumanism in its philosophical sense is actually about. It shows how resonant and maybe how scary these ideas are in the broader culture.
Wow. We've covered an incredible amount of ground today. Seriously. From those ancient dreams of immortality.
Right up to cutting-edge tech aspirations.
And the formalization of the movement, the key thinkers, the organizations. We've looked at how it relates to posthumanism, its core goals, and plunged into those deep ethical debates.
And we saw how these aren't just abstract ideas anymore. Neural implants, genetic discussions, even everyday lifestyle choices touch on this. Plus, all those critical counter-arguments, is it feasible? What about identity, fairness, democracy? It really challenges everything.
And understanding this stuff, it isn't just theoretical, is it? It helps you, the listener, make sense of the world we're living in, where that line between us and our tech gets blurrier all the time.
So it's happening now.
As technology keeps accelerating, we're not just watching this unfold. We're participants, increasingly, in our own evolution. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. What kind of future will you choose to design? Not just for ourselves, but for all sentient beings and for the generations still to come.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of sources, extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, and help you get truly well-informed, quickly. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that touches so many lives and is constantly evolving in our understanding. Autism. We've pulled together extensive source material for this deep dive, primarily from a comprehensive Wikipedia article, so it gives us a really rich and detailed foundation to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Our mission for you today is to distill the most vital insights from this wealth of information.
Yeah.
We want to offer you a clear, well-informed perspective on what autism is, how it's understood now, and what it means for individuals and society.
And as we navigate the subject, prepare for some genuinely surprising facts, I think, and maybe some shifts in perspective. This is going to be an illuminating journey. So let's start with the fundamental definition. Autism, officially known as autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. It's fundamentally a neurodevelopmental condition.
That's our starting point.
Right.
And right from the outset, it's crucial to grasp its key characteristics. These are often expressed as differences or maybe difficulties in social communication and interaction, also a preference for predictability and routine, unique sensory processing differences, often very focused interests, and repetitive behaviors.
Okay, so those are the core areas.
Yes. But for a formal diagnosis, these characteristics have to cause clinically significant challenges. They need to impact multiple areas of daily life.
Right, not just minor traits. And here's where it really starts to get interesting. It's not a straight line from mild to severe, as many might think. This is precisely why it's called a spectrum, isn't it?
Exactly. Presentations vary immensely. You see support needs ranging from minimal, maybe individuals who are largely independent, all the way to needing 24-hour care. And some autistic people are non-speaking. It's a vast landscape of human experience.
A huge range.
And it's important for you to understand that autism is usually lifelong. Currently, there's no known cure. Now, we have observed a significant increase in diagnoses since the 1990s.
Yeah, you hear about that a lot, an epidemic.
Well, that term is misleading. It isn't really an epidemic in the traditional sense. It seems to reflect broader diagnostic criteria, definitely increased awareness, and wider access to assessment, too. For some context for you, the World Health Organization estimated about 1 in 100 children were diagnosed between 2012 and 2021. But in the U.S., the CDC's 2022 data suggests it's closer to 1 in 31 children. Quite a difference.
Wow, 1 in 31, that's significant.
Yeah.
And pause-wise, you mentioned it's complex.
Very complex. The exact causes aren't fully known, but we understand it to be highly heritable. Genes play a big part.
Many genes involved, right?
Hundreds, potentially. And environmental factors seem to have only a small role, mainly prenatal, from what we understand currently. Now, shifting to how we officially understand and classify autism. The diagnostic frameworks themselves have evolved quite a bit. The DSM-5, that's the American manual from 2013, and the ICD-11, the international one, fully effective in 2022. They both unified previous diagnoses.
Like Asperger's and classic autism.
Exactly. Asperger's syndrome, classic autism, even things like childhood disintegrative disorder and PDD-NS, which is a kind of catch-all category, they're all folded into this single ASD diagnosis. The main reason was just the unclear boundaries between those older terms. It was getting confusing.
Okay, so one umbrella term now. But do the manuals categorize it the same way?
Not quite. They differ in how they categorize the support needs. The DSM-5 uses a level system, level 1 needing the least support, up to level 3 needing very substantial support. The ICD-11, on the other hand, it uses intellectual impairment and language impairment as separate factors you assess alongside the main diagnosis.
Interesting differences. And this all feeds into a bigger question, one that's really active in the community right now. Is autism fundamentally a disorder, or is it simply a difference? Research seems to be encouraging, well, alternative ways of thinking, right? Moving beyond just those traditional criteria.
That's a crucial point, yes. It's led to the development of the neurodiversity affirming framework. This framework views autistic traits not necessarily as deficits, but as a healthy variation of the human brain.
But it still acknowledges the challenges.
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely recognizes the very real challenges and disability many autistic people experience. But it fundamentally shifts the perspective away from seeing autism solely as something to be fixed or cured. And this influences language, too. Health authorities like the NIH in the U.S. or the NHS in the U.K. now recommend less pathologizing terms.
Like saying characteristics instead of...
Exactly, or likelihood instead of risk. And generally avoiding terms like treatment or cure when referring to autism itself, focusing instead on support.
Okay, so with that evolving understanding, let's dive into how autism actually presents in daily life. Keeping in mind, as you said, that variability is key. These characteristics, they often show up early, right? Infancy or childhood?
Yes, often first observable then, and they tend to persist throughout life, though how they manifest can change. So on the social and communication front, the diagnostic criteria look at difficulties across 3 main domains. First, there's social emotional reciprocity. This might show up early on, like little or no babbling in infancy, or maybe challenges with back and forth interactions like peekaboo.
Okay.
Later, it might look like what appears to be social naivety, perhaps difficulty intuitively reading body language, or maybe struggling with things like sarcasm. Second is nonverbal communication. Autistic people might display atypical nonverbal behaviors. Infrequent eye contact is common.
Which isn't necessarily disinterest, right?
Exactly. Often they find it uncomfortable or distracting. They might also struggle to recognize emotions from others' facial expressions, or have an atypical voice volume or prosody, the rhythm and intonation of speech. And the third domain is developing and sustaining relationships. In childhood, maybe less apparent interest in other kids, or more focus on objects than caretakers. What might seem like self-involvement to non-autistic people often stems from autistic differences in recognizing or prioritizing others' perspectives or interests.
That leads into the double empathy problem you mentioned earlier.
Precisely. That theory from 2012 suggests it's not just a one-way street, not just autistic people struggling to understand neurotypicals. It's more a fundamental lack of mutual understanding and empathy between both groups.
Wow.
And what's really insightful is research showing that autistic to autistic interactions can be just as effective, sometimes even more so, for transferring information as neurotypical to neurotypical interactions.
That's fascinating. So the communication problem might actually be the interface between different neurotypes, not an inherent deficit in one group.
That's exactly what the theory suggests.
Hmm.
It shifts the burden away from solely the autistic individual needing to adapt. Autistic people often create shared understanding in their own ways, too, using maybe a generous assumption of common ground or having a low demand for coordination in conversations.
And conversations might follow intense interests. You called it monotropism.
Yes, monotropism.
Yeah.
It's like having an attention system that tends to focus very deeply on one or just a few interests at a time. This intense focus isn't necessarily a deficit. It's how many autistic individuals gather information, build understanding, and often develop really unique areas of expertise.
That makes so much sense. It reframes restricted interests entirely. Another huge and often hidden part of this is masking or camouflaging. Could you unpack that for us?
Sure, masking is when autistic individuals consciously or unconsciously develop coping mechanisms to appear more neurotypical, essentially hiding their artistic traits.
Why do they do that?
Often to fit in, avoid stigma, bullying, or negative judgment. But it comes at a tremendous cost. It's strongly linked to worse mental health outcomes, anxiety, depression, burnout, and it can significantly delay diagnosis, preventing access to vital supports.
It sounds exhausting, and like it's not just a personal struggle, but maybe a societal issue. How do we unknowingly contribute to this pressure to mask?
That's a great question. When society has very rigid expectations of normal social interaction, or when we don't explicitly value neurodiversity, we inadvertently create environments where masking feels necessary for survival. We end up stifling authentic identity and creating immense internal pressure without even realizing it.
That's a powerful insight for everyone listening.
Moving on to the second core feature area, restricted and repetitive behaviors, or RRBs. This includes repetitive physical movements, often called stimming, things like hand flapping, rocking, spinning.
And these aren't just meaningless movements.
No, not usually. They often serve a real purpose. Maybe self-regulation during stress or anxiety, or expressing excitement, or dealing with sensory input. This category also includes a strong adherence to routines and resistance to change. Even small, unexpected disruptions can cause significant distress for some.
Right.
Many autistic individuals also have highly restricted and intense interests. While sometimes seen negatively from the outside, these can actually bring huge personal fulfillment and lead to deep, specialized knowledge.
Like the monotropism we discussed.
Exactly. And finally, unusual reactions to sensory inputs are very common. This could be hypersensitivity and aversion to certain sounds, lights, textures. Or it could be hyposensitivity, maybe an apparent indifference to pain or temperature, or seeking out strong sensory experiences.
And this is different from, say, OCD.
Yes, that's an important distinction. While some behaviors might look similar on the surface, OCD typically involves distressing obsessions and compulsions aimed at preventing a feared negative outcome. Autistic RRBs are generally not driven by that kind of specific fear.
Got it. And what about language itself? You mentioned non-speaking individuals earlier.
Yes, there's a wide spectrum here too. Many autistic children develop language skills, but perhaps at an uneven pace. And estimates suggest about 25 to 35% of autistic school-age children are non-speaking or minimally speaking, meaning they use few or no spoken words.
But they might communicate in other ways.
Absolutely. Augmentative and alternative communication, AAC, is vital. On the other end, some autistic children exhibit hyperlexia. They can read incredibly well, often self-taught, before school age, sometimes before they speak fluently.
Such fascinating contrasts. Now, you touched on mental health risks earlier, and the statistics sounded quite stark.
They are, unfortunately. Self-injurious behavior, SIB, is about 3 times more common in autistic people compared to the general population. It's often misunderstood, but can be a way to communicate needs, cope with overwhelming sensory input, or manage intense emotions when other methods aren't available or effective.
That's crucial context.
And depression is significantly higher, maybe 4 times more likely. Suicidality is also a major concern. Research suggests about a quarter of autistic youth and maybe a third of all autistic adults have experienced suicidal thoughts. And tragically, they are about 3 times as likely to attempt suicide.
Those numbers are incredibly sobering. What drives these risks?
It's complex, but common risk factors include difficulties with communication, challenges regulating sensory input, the immense strain of masking we talked about, And very importantly, high rates of victimization, things like bullying, social exclusion, and even higher rates of sexual assault compared to neurotypical peers.
That's heartbreaking. It really underscores the need for better support and understanding. Beyond the formal diagnoses, autistic people often talk about other challenging experiences, right? Things like burnout.
Yes, exactly. These aren't formal diagnoses in the DSM or ICD yet, but they reflect very real, significant daily challenges. Autistic fatigue or burnout is a big one. It's described as this profound, prolonged state of exhaustion, mental, physical, emotional. It's distinct from occupational burnout.
What causes it?
Often, it's the cumulative effect of navigating a world not designed for autistic neurology, the constant effort of camouflaging or masking autistic traits. Things that can help ameliorate it include reducing masking, allowing more stimming, engaging in those special interests, and having downtime.
Then there's something called autistic inertia.
Yes, that feeling of being stuck.
Yeah.
Difficulty initiating tasks, transitioning between activities, or even stopping an activity once started. You might intellectually know you need or want to do something like get out of bed, but feel physically unable to start the motion. It's not laziness or lack of motivation.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It can be. And related to overwhelm, you have meltdowns and shutdowns. Meltdowns are often more externalized, maybe crying, shouting, physical actions. It's an intense response to being completely overwhelmed, often by sensory or social overload. Shutdowns are more internalized. The person might withdraw, become unable to speak or respond, seem zoned out. It's like their system temporarily powers down to cope with the overload.
Understanding the triggers like sensory overload or unexpected changes and offering quiet space or reducing demands seems key then.
Absolutely. Patience, reducing pressure, providing a safe, quiet space can make a huge difference in those moments.
What other features might people notice?
Well, there's often what's called a spiky skills profile. This means having strong abilities in some areas, sometimes very advanced, contrasting sharply with weaker abilities in others.
So not an even development across the board.
Exactly. Someone might excel at complex pattern recognition, say, but really struggle with daily living skills or motor coordination. Occasionally you see splinter skills or even savant syndrome. These are rare talents, maybe in music, math, or memory, that appear remarkable and somewhat isolated from overall abilities.
Right.
We also commonly see motor difficulties maybe affecting 60 to 80% of autistic individuals. Things like poor muscle tone, issues with motor planning or coordination, sometimes toe walking.
And I imagine caregivers face unique challenges too.
Definitely. Caregivers, especially parents, often report increased stress and can face affiliate stigma by association. However, it's also true that autistic family members can sometimes offer a deeper, more intuitive understanding of an autistic child's needs and communication style, which can be incredibly valuable.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned earlier how autism often doesn't exist in isolation. Let's talk about co-occurring conditions.
Yes, this is really important. Various conditions frequently co-occur with autism. Sometimes this can complicate diagnosis, leading to what's called diagnostic overshadowing.
Meaning the autistic traits might mask or be mistaken for symptoms of another condition, or vice versa.
Exactly. For instance, ADHD is very common. Estimates range from 25% up to maybe 32% of autistic people also have ADHD. Epilepsy occurs in about 10%. Intellectual disabilities are present in around 30% to 40% of autistic individuals, though that means the majority do not have an intellectual disability.
Okay.
We also see high rates of anxiety disorders, maybe 17% to 23%, depression around 9% to 13%, and OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder, in about 7% to 10%.
And are there others beyond those main psychiatric ones?
Yes. Certain genetic conditions are linked to what's called syndromic autism. Gastrointestinal problems like constipation or stomach pain are frequently reported. Sleep issues are also very common and can significantly impact daily functioning.
And you mentioned gender dysphoria earlier.
Yes, there's emerging, though still tentative, evidence suggesting higher rates of gender dysphoria among autistic people compared to the general population. It's an area needing more research, but adds another important layer to consider regarding identity and experience.
Wow. So autism really is interwoven with so many other aspects of health and identity.
It truly is. Which leads us to thinking about support and management. Here, perspectives can differ quite significantly. The more traditional medical model might focus on interventions aimed at addressing the core characteristics of autism, whereas the neurodiversity movement generally supports interventions aimed at enhancing functional communication, managing related issues like anxiety or inertia, or maybe addressing behaviors considered harmful.
but not trying to change the fundamental autistic way of being.
Exactly. Not seeking to alter core autistic features, but rather supporting the individual to thrive as an autistic person.
So it's a shift in the goalposts, really.
You could say that. It's about empowering the individual within their neurotype.
What kinds of non-drug interventions are common?
Well, things like intensive special education tailored to individual needs, speech and language therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, often adapted for autistic communication styles, and occupational therapy are frequently used. The goal is generally to increase functional independence, quality of life, and well-being.
And what about ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis? That one seems quite controversial.
It is. ABA is a widely used behavioral therapy, particularly in the U.S. It aims to teach desired behaviors and reduce undesired ones, often using reinforcement, like rewards. Early, intensive ABA programs are often cited as effective for improving language and adaptive skills in autistic preschoolers.
But the criticisms.
They are significant and come from many autistic adults and advocates. Concerns include ethical issues, like creating prompt dependency, an overemphasis on compliance, and suppressing natural autistic behaviors like stimming, and the fundamental argument that it often aims to make children appear more neurotypical rather than actually supporting their autistic identity and needs.
And there are issues with the research itself.
Yes, concerns have been raised about unreported conflicts of interest in some ABA research, which can make it harder to evaluate its effectiveness and applicability objectively. It's a really complex and debated area.
It sounds like it. So regardless of the specific therapy approach, inclusion seems crucial.
Absolutely vital. In education, for example, models like Universal Design for Learning, UDL, aim to create curricula that are accessible to everyone from the start. But autistic students still face huge barriers: overwhelming sensory environments, social anxieties, high rates of bullying, which can sometimes lead to emotionally based school non-attendance.
And in the workplace.
Similar challenges. Many autistic adults are unemployed or underemployed despite having valuable skills. Barriers range from navigating the social demands of interviews to coping with sensory aspects of the workplace.
But adjustments can make a big difference.
Huge difference. Reasonable adjustments like flexible hours, providing noise-canceling headphones, clear communication protocols, maybe mentorship programs. These don't just support autistic employees. They often benefit employers too, bringing diverse perspectives, intense focus, loyalty, and innovation to the workplace. It's a win-win when done right.
That's a really important point for employers listening. Now, what about medications?
Right, pharmacological interventions. It's crucial for you to understand that medications are used to manage co-occurring conditions like severe aggression, self-injury, anxiety, or ADHD symptoms, not the core features of autism itself. There's no pill for autism.
Okay. Are any specifically approved?
In the U.S., the FDA has approved 2 atypical antipsychotics, risperidone and aripiprazole, specifically for reducing irritability, aggression, and self-injurious behaviors in some autistic children and adolescents. But they come with potentially significant side effects, like weight gain and metabolic issues, and should be used very cautiously, usually when behavioral approaches alone haven't been sufficient. Overprescription is a concern.
And this leads to the really critical warning about unproven, potentially harmful alternative treatments.
Yes, extremely important. You absolutely must warn listeners about dangerous and disproven so-called treatments. This includes chelation therapy, which attempts to remove heavy metals, but has no basis for autism and has tragically led to documented deaths.
Oh my goodness.
Also, bleach-based solutions, like Miracle Mineral Solution, MMS, these are incredibly dangerous industrial chemicals, not medicine. And certain dietary interventions like strict gluten-free and casein-free GFCF diets. While some individuals might have specific sensitivities, there's no strong evidence they help core autism features for most people, and they can lead to nutritional deficiencies and even harm, like reduced bone thickness.
So always consult qualified medical professionals, not questionable online sources.
Always. On a more positive note, some complementary therapies show emerging evidence for improving well-being, not curing autism. Things like mindfulness-based practices adapted for autistic individuals and music therapy seem promising for some.
Okay, so we've covered what autism is, how it presents, how it's supported, which brings us back to that big question, why? What do we actually know about the causes?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The bottom line is the exact causes are still unknown. Autism is understood as a complex condition. It likely involves multiple, often co-occurring contributing factors influencing brain development. It's very unlikely there's a single cause for all autism.
But genetics are a major piece of the puzzle.
Definitely the largest piece we currently understand. As we said, autism is highly heritable. Estimates range from 74% up to 93%. This involves potentially hundreds of different genes, many with small individual effects, interacting in complex ways. It's not like a single autism gene.
And you mentioned de novo mutations.
Yes, these are spontaneous genetic changes that appear in the individual but aren't inherited from the parents. They can play a role, especially in families where only one child is autistic. There's also a link between de novo mutations and older paternal age.
Okay, so genetics are key. Now, we absolutely have to address some of the myths that have caused so much harm. The refrigerator mother idea.
Yes, we must debunk that firmly. This was a theory from the mid-20th century, psychoanalytic in origin, that wrongly blamed autism on cold, rejecting, emotionally refrigerated mothers. It has been thoroughly, completely disproven by decades of research showing the biological basis of autism. But it caused immense, unwarranted guilt and stigma for parents, especially mothers, for a long time.
A truly damaging myth. And the other big one, the vaccine hypothesis.
Right. This is another harmful myth that needs direct refutation. The claim that vaccines, particularly the MMR vaccine or the preservative thimerosal, cause autism is false. It originated largely from a fraudulent 1998 study by Andrew Wakefield. That study was retracted by the medical journal, and Wakefield lost his medical license due to ethical violations and misrepresentation of data.
And subsequent research.
Massive amounts of subsequent research involving millions of children worldwide have consistently shown no link between vaccines and autism. The claims are biologically implausible, but the damage was done. These myths have tragically led to lower immunization rates in some communities, resulting in outbreaks of preventable diseases like measles and unnecessary suffering and even deaths. It's a public health crisis fueled by misinformation.
So the science is absolutely clear. Vaccines do not cause autism.
Unequivocally clear.
Beyond genetics, are there other scientific theories about the brain and autism?
Yes, there are neurocognitive theories trying to explain the processing differences. For example, the intense world theory suggests that the autistic brain might be hyperreactive, leading to heightened sensory perception and emotional intensity, which can be overwhelming. Or the enhanced perceptual functioning theory proposes superior abilities in detecting details. And there are evolutionary hypotheses, too.
Like the solitary forager hypothesis.
Right, that suggests traits like intense focus, systemizing, and perhaps reduced immediate social drive might have been advantageous in early human environments, maybe for tasks like tool-making, tracking, or understanding natural systems. These are still hypotheses, of course.
Fascinating ideas. So turning to autism in society, what do we know about demographics? You mentioned prevalence earlier.
Yes, the WHO estimate around 1 in 100 globally. The US CDC closer to 1 in 31. And there's a consistent finding that males are diagnosed more often than females, around 3 times more likely.
Why is that?
The reasons aren't fully clear. Theories include potential biological differences, but also diagnostic bias. Females might present differently, perhaps with less obvious repetitive behaviors or more internalized challenges. They might also be better at masking, leading to underdiagnosis or later diagnosis.
Interesting. And the word autism itself, where did it come from?
The term autismus was actually cloned back in 1912 by a Swiss psychiatrist, Paul Eugen Bleuler. He derived it from the Greek word autos, meaning self, initially to describe withdrawn symptoms in schizophrenia. But crucially, decades before it was widely recognized in the West, a Soviet child psychiatrist named Grinya Sukhareva made incredibly insightful observations in the 1920s.
Really? What did she observe?
Her descriptions of children with what she called schizoid psychopathy, an unfortunate term by today's standards, closely mirror current descriptions of ASD. She noted social peculiarities, repetitive behaviors, sensory sensitivities, and even differentiated it clearly from childhood schizophrenia. Her work was remarkably prescient but largely unknown in the West for decades.
That's incredible, the hidden history there.
Definitely. And today, we see the impact of the neurodiversity movement and the related autism rights movement. The core idea, as we discussed, is framing autism not as a disease to be cured, but as a natural and valuable variation of the human brain, a part of human diversity. The movement advocates for acceptance of autistic behaviors, societal accommodations, and therapies focused on coping skills and quality of life, rather than normalization.
It sounds incredibly empowering for many, but you mentioned earlier there are debates within the autistic community about this framework.
Yes, that's important to acknowledge. There is ongoing discussion and sometimes controversy. Some critics, including some autistic people with very high support needs or their families, question whether the neurodiversity paradigm adequately represents their experiences of significant disability and challenge, or whether it sometimes minimizes the difficulties involved. It's not a monolithic viewpoint.
Now, that's a vital nuance. It's not always simple agreement.
No, human experience rarely is.
Yet, despite these complexities, we see public figures really embracing their autistic identity. You mentioned Greta Thunberg.
Yes, climate activist Greta Thunberg has openly called her autism a superpower, linking it to her intense focus and unwavering commitment to her cause.
And Bill Gates has speculated.
Right. Bill Gates has mentioned in interviews that, looking back, he likely would be diagnosed on the autism spectrum if assessed today, relating it perhaps to his own deep focus and different way of thinking.
These examples really highlight how those focused interests and different perspectives, sometimes seen as challenges, can also be incredible strengths, leading to unique skills and contributions. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground in this deep dive, from the definitions and the sheer diversity of characteristics, to the complex, often misunderstood causes, the various, sometimes debated approaches to support and management, and the vibrant societal movements really shaping how we understand autism today.
Absolutely. And if we try to connect this all back to the bigger picture for you, what we've really unpacked today underscores that autism isn't one single thing. It's a deeply varied human experience that fundamentally challenges our conventional, often neurotypical, understandings of communication, social interaction, learning, even intelligence itself. It truly highlights the incredible richness of human neurological diversity.
This deep dive has definitely offered you, our listener, a shortcut to becoming truly well-informed on a complex subject, hopefully packed with some surprising facts and those different perspectives we promised. It really gives you those aha moments that help knowledge stick. So here's a final thought to leave you with. As you go about your day, consider how our societal structures, our workplaces, our schools, even our everyday expectations, how might they need to evolve? Not just to accommodate autistic people in a minimal sense, but to genuinely embrace, learn from, and value the unique ways of being, thinking, and perceiving the world that neurodiversity brings. What might embracing that fully mean for creating a richer, more inclusive, and maybe even more innovative society for absolutely everyone? Thanks for joining us on the deep dive as we explored this fascinating and important subject.